Welcome back, Dr. Metzler. Once again,
Mhm.
what is your latest take on the global financial system?
Yeah, we are in the fifth phase of the global financial meltdown. As you know, it started in 22 with the fall of Evergrande Group, which we could prove that had been defaulting and nobody believed it. Yeah, and then we predicted that the gold price will skyrocket. And nobody believed us, and now it's reality. Yeah, so
What are we looking at now? Gold 4,400, silver 76, 70, actually $80 an ounce for silver today. And we were talking about this,
yeah.
I still remember silver was at like 17, 18 bucks, right? Gold was at
Yeah,
like
and
what,
gold
like
was
22?
1,700. Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of people are kind of kicking themselves in the ass for not buying it and taking that, taking those gains. But at least we're still at it. And so, as a matter of fact, it's around the subject. What do you actually think is going to happen with gold? How do you think gold and silver are looking for the next year, 2 years, 5 years?
Oh, gold and silver is still pretty cheap. So don't believe what people are telling you. So it's extremely cheap. So continue to buy gold and silver. And you will, at the end of this year, at the end of 26, we will see even higher profits than this year. Yeah. So,
I wouldn't mind that at
yeah.
all. I wouldn't mind that in the slightest bit. What is it? Isn't it like I think 1% of people in the world actually own any metals at all, like any silver or gold, which is astronomically small when you really think about it. Where do you think we're going next? Right, we went through Evergrande, the collapse of the Chinese real estate developers. Many of them went insolvent. Many of them went out of business. And I think a lot of people were disappointed because they didn't see like an immediate crash in financial markets. Why do you think that is? I mean, I understand and you understand why that is, right? But you try to explain to people that maybe expected an immediate crash in stocks and all that stuff. Why is it that it doesn't always play out that way, or why didn't it play out that way when companies like Evergrande collapsed and took out, nearly $1 trillion worth of value from a lot of these banks?
So there's a lot of interventions from reserve banks globally to avoid crashes. Yeah, and we have seen this after Russia invaded the Ukraine. There started a crash and was then in the second phase of the global financial meltdown. Was then the world was flooded with liquidity to stop that crash. So and there have been prevented a lot of things, but we are now coming to a point where it's extremely hard to stop things as the faith in the dollar is going away, and this is the beginning of the end. Yeah. Sorry
I
to say
like
that.
that.
The faith in the dollar is vanishes, then we will end in the final phase of the global financial meltdown, and this will be the hyperinflation phase where the middle class is losing everything. Yeah, to prevent you from the loss of your wealth, it's very important over the next months and years to buy step by step gold and silver and tangible assets,
Do,
and become also a little bit independent if you grow your own food. Yeah, just to prevent that you are too dependent on the debt matrix we are currently living worldwide. Yeah.
I understand what you're saying. So a lot of people are,
Mm.
overly dependent on the system of debt and constantly recycling and getting further into it. Do you believe that the lack of confidence in the fiat and the US dollar is why the repricing of silver and gold is starting to happen so quickly?
Yes, it's you see it now with silver. Actually, there's a run on the physical silver
Hmm.
in the storages, and now everybody knows that yeah, it's not enough silver out there. And the same thing will happen to gold. Yeah. So, and if you see the German government and the Italian government just asked the gold reserve to be repatriated to them from the Fed. So 1,200 tons of gold they asked to bring back to Germany and Italy. So this has happened before. So 300 tons of gold have been brought back to Germany in, I think it was in 2020 2020 after 7 years of preparation.
Wow.
And the confidence in the system and in the dollar is going away. And if governments are asking to get the gold back, is a sign that even people in the middle class should understand and see what's coming.
Why do you think a lot of people don't, really understand or don't want to take into consideration the fact that there are other hedges for the inflation of the dollar?
It was so easy in the past, and it's still so easy if you invest in stocks. It goes up and goes up and goes up. In an inflationary phase, it's always going up until it completely crashes at some point. Yeah, with gold, it's not the case. You have, if you have the gold in the hand, you own it, and that's secure. Yeah,
Having
but
it actually in hand, right? Being
but
able to hear
but
it
what
clink together.
but what could happen at some stage is, and it happened 100 years ago in the US and also in Europe, that you are not allowed to own your own gold. You have to sell it to the government. Yeah, so that
True.
could happen again. Yeah, and in that case, then sell it. You have to sell it to the government, but then you might be able to buy tokenized gold. We had started a project on that, but it was too early. We started in 23 and became live in 24 in Dubai. So it was serious money. But there was no demand, no retail demand. But once the gold trading is prohibited, then everybody will go into these tokens again. So we will come back with that project.
Really, it was just too early
Yeah.
for some people to actually understand the adoption of it, I think. And are you currently working to getting Sirius money, SIRIUS, available here in the United States in the future so that
It was planned when we launched it in Dubai, but then the demand was not there. And but we can reconsider, and once the trading of gold would be prohibited, then it would be an option to go in if we have the chance. Yeah.
yeah, so if there's a possibility of governments forcing people to sell their gold or silver, like I think we see that happen in the 1920s. Am I
Yeah,
incorrect?
correct. There was a law in the 1920s in the US and also in Europe to sell the gold. Yeah.
Yeah, I know some people were still, trying to hoard it under their mattress or say that they lost all their silver in a boating accident, right? That's the running joke now for when the government wants to take your weapons and your precious metals and stuff, they say that I lost it all in a boating accident. But yeah, I think that would be probably a very powerful way to get people to be able to continue to purchase it, right? Because if they can't buy physical, they can buy the token that is backed by the physical and get future delivery. I think that would be an extremely important and powerful way to people to actually own it. So yeah, maybe we could do something there in the
And
future. I know that.
yeah, and it must be stored in a secure place. So we are based in Switzerland, Liechtenstein, and Dubai. So these would be the places to store the gold. Yeah.
What if they want to do like a Fort Knox style audit?
Yeah, the gold is still there in
It's
Switzerland, but in Fort Knox there had been no confirmation. So Trump and Elon Musk asked for it. I think it was in February last year, but so far no confirmation.
I wonder, do you think that maybe they were told, "Hey, we've only got, like 10% of that gold here. We should probably not say anything about it." I don't know.
I think something is wrong here. So, and you should think about why no communication has been made about that. Yeah. So, but it's clear that the gold, each piece of gold, has been sold 100 up to 500 times. So it's leveraged. It does not exist. There's a big difference between paper gold and physical gold. So this is very important to understand for your audience, that right now the premium between physical gold and paper gold is low, but as we see with silver right now, to hold the physical silver in hand has an extremely high premium. The same will happen with gold. If there would be a confirmation that all gold is in Fort Knox or something is missing, then there would be a run on gold, and this is actually just before hyperinflation would start. Yeah. So if this would happen. Yeah, yeah.
So you're saying that we would potentially see a massive run on silver and gold if there was signs of hyperinflation.
No, the other way around. First, you have the run on the gold and the silver, and then the hyperinflation will start. Okay.
So is it a possibility, or is it plausible at least, that that could potentially be why we're beginning to see the repricing of gold and silver now?
Yes, it's we see it with silver. There's a squeeze out in silver right now. We will see a squeeze out in gold, and the gold price definitely will go to 10,000 this year or even higher. Yeah.
Holy cow.
And,
So you're calling for
and
like 125% run on the price of gold.
yeah, if we have global tensions, if China would invade Taiwan, which is very likely now to happen within the next 12 to 18 months, then could be even higher. Yeah, the gold. Yeah, and silver, of course, as well.
That's
Yeah.
wild. That's wild. Yeah, yeah, like you said in the last, I don't know, silver's outpricing, well, excuse me, in a percentage basis, silver is outpacing gold. Do you think that's because of the rehypothecations of paper like you were talking about previously?
I think if you look at the silver to gold ratio, silver is still a lot too cheap compared to gold. Silver could be even the better performance in if you buy precious metals, even at the level now.
That's bullish. That's bullish.
Mm,
But yeah, like you were mentioning, it's hard to store. You know what I mean? And a lot of
mm,
people, that own it understand that, silver in particular, it can be pretty heavy. You know what I mean? You got a few hundred
mm,
ounces of it. It takes up a good amount of space. You've got to have it secure. And
mm.
I do think that in the future, there's a good potential that people are going to want something more than
Mm.
just, like products like we're currently seeing with PSLV
Mm.
or
Yeah.
SLV.
Yeah, but if you want to leverage, if you are full into the story of precious metals, you then buy mine stocks. Silver and gold mine stocks are very cheap right now. It's the future gold, future silver, and so my recommendation go into these stocks right now. There are some projects, or you have to look into the projects if you are able to do. There's some scam out there, so not everything is good. So my recommendation, the better performance would be right now to buy gold and silver stocks, but you have to mix it, yeah,
Yeah.
with physical metals, yeah.
So you're saying that you think it's a good idea to be hedged in the sense of having some stocks or crypto that reflect gold and silver, particularly the miners, in order to have exposure to higher increases in pricing, but also to have some of the precious metals in order to have the ability to have a tangible asset in your hands that no matter
Correct.
what, if anything happens to the fiat currency, you've still got something that you can make purchases that you can sustain your family with.
If it's common sense that we have not enough gold and silver, then it's high strategic interest to own mines like it is right now to own oil fields or oil reserves. There will be a lot of attention who is owning or which countries has a lot of gold and silver mines similar to who is owning gold. Yeah, so we have to take a look at that.
One of that comes to mind is actually Highcroft Mining Corporation, stock ticker
Mm,
HYMC. We've been talking about it on this channel for quite a while, and over the last 5 year period, it is down a bit due to a reverse split that happened, I think, about 3 years ago. But over the last year specifically, the stock is up 1,177%. It started in January of this year at $2.10, and currently today sits at about $27 a share. Well, with actually, they had a 100% gain in the month of December alone. And it appears that some of these institutions are actually taking your advice on that and taking you up on that offer and starting to buy into these, mining corporations, understanding that the production of future silver and future gold is going to be very valuable, particularly if it's repriced higher, right? We're already seeing silver at 80
mm.
bucks up from under 20 a few years ago, and gold currently at 4,700 and change, up from 2,000 a few years ago. So I totally see what you're saying there, and I do agree that there could be a very good way to get exposure to
So
some of those mines on the internet.
once we have seen the hyperinflation, you have to restart the system, okay? And you have not enough gold and silver to restart it. So owning the mines is very key to restart a new financial system. So the countries who are owning then these resources would be the winner in a restart. Yeah.
You heard the man, folks. You heard the man. This is where it's at, right here. Well, I'm glad to hear that there are actually options for people. I think that not enough people are taking it seriously in the sense that I understand it's very easy to be busy with your 9 to 5 and working every day, working 40, 60, 80 hours a week to provide for your family, to pay the bills, to put food on the table. But at the same time, we have to be cognizant of the fact that there are some serious things happening in the world in macroeconomics and geopolitics that are going to affect markets, that are going to affect interest rates, they're going to affect mortgages, that are going to affect the value of everything that we buy every single day. And even though we've seen a decrease in inflation in the short term, we recently saw a massive increase in inflation here during the Biden presidency. What leads you to believe, Dr. Metzler, that we might be seeing hyperinflation in the, near to midterm future?
Because, as I mentioned, countries like Germany and Italy are withdrawing gold from the Federal Reserve. So Europe is losing the faith and other as well. So the China has reduced the government debt bond holdings, the BRICS countries, and the states have to buy it their own debt. And this is not healthy and can be maintained sometime. But yeah, is it will the final phase will come overnight, yeah,
You
and
think it'll be
then
that fast kind of a situation where
yeah.
things start to it's like at first very slowly and then all at once kind of situation.
Yes. So I think that we have missed the point where we could have had some crashes to sanitize the system, to restart, to reboot the system. But the governments now and in the past decided just to continue and flood the system with fresh money, printing money. And at some point, we cannot change anymore. So hyperinflation, as I say, is the only way out of the
So all the
system. And
trajectories lead to the same point.
yeah, so is a kind of is mathematics. It will happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
And is no way out. Of course, it has consequences on the society. Yeah, but you can prepare yourself and try to get independent from the debt system. Yeah.
You heard them, folks. Do something to make sure that you're properly hedged. Tangible assets, tangible goods. We are staring at the face of the global financial meltdown. What do you think are the next signs that people should be looking for towards
Yeah,
the next
look,
step here in
look,
the financial meltdown?
look at Japan. The system in Japan is unhealthy. Every day can happen something out of Japan.
Are you talking about Japanese bond
And
yields, for example?
yeah, if they increase the yields and money flows out of Japan, it can have a deep impact of the carry trades. So we have seen it last year. And then overnight, can maybe Taiwan will be invaded, and then there will be sanctions on China, and the connections to China will be disrupted. Something like that, yeah.
And at mentioning that as well, since we're looking at China could potentially be more interested in Taiwan now that the United States has cut their supply of oil from Venezuela. So
Yeah.
I see where you're saying there's a lot of possibilities when it comes to, geopolitics that something happens relatively quickly that changes the landscape and causes some sort of a global trade war or some sort of issue with the
Mhm.
Japanese yen carry trade, like you mentioned.
Mhm.
I could definitely see that
Mhm.
happening. And in case people were unaware, a lot of what we saw just last year in the stock market and a minor correction was just some minor issues with the Japanese yen carry trade. And that could very, very easily change at any moment depending on the interest rates, both overseas and here in the States. So I definitely do see that as being the potential to cause some serious issues as well.
Yeah, if we see a hyperinflation scenario, a lot of people will lose lose their fortune. But if you look in the past, if you read books about the hyperinflation phase 100 years ago in the US and in Germany, there had been also some people who became billionaires. Okay, so is about how you manage to predict and get prepared. You can even benefit from such a horrible situation of a hyperinflation.
Finally, some good
So
news. There's some serious upside
yeah,
there for people, isn't
yes,
there?
of course, yeah.
So what should I buy? Should I buy Pokemon cards or should I buy silver and gold?
Maybe short-term Pokemon cards, mid-term it's silver and gold, and hold it in hand.
I understand. I love that.
If
Yeah,
you
hold
can.
it in hand. If you can hear it
Yeah.
and feel it,
It-
you're in a much better position.
yeah. If you're allowed to do so. Yeah.
Yeah,
If not, there will be other ways to own gold. Yeah.
so you think that much like the prior administrations, the Trump administration is not quite ready to let the system collapse on itself and have to revalue the dollar to gold, reprice the dollar to gold.
Is not no way back. It's not possible. Only if they would own the gold mines or silver mines across the world, then you could try to do it. Yeah.
That's kind of a
Yeah.
scary thought, you know? So that's why in the 20s the government forced people to give up their silver and gold.
Just before the hyperinflation started. Yeah.
Wow. I guess I better hide mine very
So
well. I'm just kidding. Just kidding, of course. If
yeah.
you had to choose asset classes aside from
Yeah.
gold and silver, what would you
Mhm.
personally buy?
Avoid bonds.
Avoid
Okay.
bonds.
Avoid bonds. Buy shares because on selected sectors. Yeah. So gold mine shares, of course, I mentioned before, is a leverage of gold and silver. We will have global military conflicts, and the drone businesses are booming. So buy drone shares. That's also a good buy this year. Yeah.
So I'm hearing technology, weapons,
Technology.
war.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's scary, but it's
That's
true, right? So that kind of puts a lot on the table. That leaves a lot of options for people in different ways to diversify, from what I'm hearing.
Of course. So we will not have the hyperinflation within the next months. It will be a development, and we will have some more calls with you. And before it happens, we will tell the people when is the right point to shift completely in gold and silver. But right now, a good buy is also shares, equities in defense companies and gold mines.
Get it while the market's running hot, basically, right?
Yeah. Mm.
Okay.
So the AI shares are already went up. So, but gold mines, silver mines shares, and drone shares are still cheap.
So you think the ship has sailed on AI? AI is too expensive at the moment,
Yes, yes.
and gold and silver and mines, weapons, that kind of stuff is still very well priced, maybe even at a deal prices at the moment. Well, you know what? Speaking, since you mentioned drones, we saw in the past, Barack Obama, drone bombed, over 26,000 different times, and there wasn't much information about it on the news. Actually, there was plenty of information about it on the news, but there wasn't much resistance from people. Why do you think that Obama using drones and aircraft to commit over 26,000 bombings didn't cause any issues with people's, particularly on the left, versus Donald Trump going forward and actually capturing a former president of Venezuela and a drug cartel member, Nicolas Maduro? Why would you believe that people are so up in arms over Donald Trump capturing Maduro, even though there was a pre-existing bounty on his head that was placed by the Biden administration to the tune of $25 million? What is the difference there? Neither one had congressional approval. One killed many, many, many people, including some Americans, and the other didn't kill any Americans, only a handful of cartel members, and captured Nicolas Maduro. Why do you believe that there's so much outrage against that current situation with former President Maduro?
Actually, it's very difficult to comment on political issues, but to capture the oil reserves of Venezuela under the influence of the US is a logical move. We could see more, but why is this done right now? Is because we are in a debt system, and it's very hard for the US to pay the debt, and you have to have some collateral against. It's a good strategic move, but has consequences and could even be against the trust in the US and against the trust of the US dollar as a reserve
Yeah.
currency. Yeah.
But what about the argument that Venezuela took over American companies that were in Venezuela at the time, through the use of the cartels and the illegitimate presidency of Maduro? Because they used to be American firms, they used to be American property, and a lot of that oil was seized by Venezuela and taken from American companies, and also was being traded to countries like Russia and countries like China using some of the oil tankers that the United States seized just a few weeks ago. Do you think it's not a good strategic move to take that capacity of oil away from China and Russia versus letting them continue to make use of the liquid gold, if you will?
No, as I mentioned, it was a good move and secured the assets for the US. Was logical, but if it was wise, I don't know. We will see in the future. Yeah.
I see. So you're saying those are two very different things, right? It was a good strategic
Yeah.
move, but who knows if
Yeah.
it was actually the best move, right? Makes sense. I'm definitely seeing that. So you're looking at an invasion from China into Taiwan in the near future, it sounds like.
Yeah, it looks like that after the move into Venezuela, China could argue it easily to take Taiwan,
That's a good
and
point.
I think will happen again. Is it a wise move? Yeah, and the timing is also important.
Not getting that 100 billion plus, tons of oil or barrels of oil, I should say, 100 billion barrels
Mm,
of oil
mm,
from
mm,
Venezuela, might put China in a position where they decide they do need to make a move on Taiwan, all
mm,
things considered there, or maybe even make them feel more entitled to it. So yeah, that's a very good possibility and a very good point. How do you think that
mm.
would actually affect global trade and the possibility of further inflation?
It will then be the beginning of the last phase of financial meltdown if Taiwan is invaded, because then there will be a lot of sanctions from Europe against China, from the US. It will disrupt the supply chains. China is more independent than Europe and the US if the supply chains is disrupted. Yeah.
I think you make a great point there. That's absolutely true. We rely on them a lot more than they rely on us. What are your feelings on the recent reduction on the import deficit by Donald Trump? I'm sure you're aware that in March of
Mhm.
this year, not long after he took over from the Biden administration, the global trade deficit for imports was at $136 billion. And as of this month, we are now at a deficit of only $30 billion, a reduction of over $106 billion. Do you believe it to be due to the onshoring of manufacturing in other companies and jobs, or due to the complete lack of, demand for imports due to the tariffs?
It's because of the tariffs, yeah, and it is a consequence of the tariffs. And it could work, yeah, it could work. A lot of production has been moved from the US to Asia, and it takes time to restart it again in the US. A lot of investments have to be made. Is a in We have to see in mid and long term if it was beneficial or destructive.
What are your
Mm.
thoughts on the Federal Reserve recently stating that the tariffs were not as inflationary as they originally thought they were going to be?
So as you know, the inflation rate is manipulated. So I do not believe in official inflation rates. If you go to the supermarket in the US in the last 3 years, you have seen double or triple of some products.
Mhm.
The same in Europe. Yeah, if you buy a bar of chocolate in Europe was 80 cents and now is up to 3 euros. So it's crazy. And on the other hand, some computers, phones far cheaper. You can manipulate this. But I think we have to look at the housing costs and the food costs to calculate the inflation correctly. Yeah.
That's a great point, as a matter of fact,
Mm,
because you're right. And I have seen some things, like, for example, the price of eggs have really
mm,
collapsed quite a lot here in the United States, which is a
mm,
great thing for most people, right? And then
mm,
others have increased in cost. Of course, look at the price of beef, right? And many people are saying that it was due to the the Biden era regulations, in cutting beef production and the ability for farms to actually sell their beef outside of supermarkets, sell it themselves. But now that those regulations have been changed, it takes 2 to 3 years to produce a head of cattle. So it's going to be a while before we start seeing a reduction in those prices as well. So I do understand exactly what you're saying there also. And especially certain things have definitely gone up in price and have not come back down. And like you mentioned, getting a TV now is dirt cheap, but when you think about the price of a computer, or necessarily specifically RAM, right? The random access memory for a computer today is more than double what it was 6 months ago due to a lot of the issues with, silicon and chips. Since you mentioned housing, I wanted to ask you, what are your thoughts on Donald Trump using the government entities Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac to purchase $200 billion worth of mortgage-backed securities in an attempt to bring down the price of bring down the mortgage interest rates by 25 basis points or 50 basis points as they estimate?
Yes, it's giving the market liquidity. It needs liquidity, and it's a good move. It is like a measure, something which was used in the communism. Okay, the state is made an intervention. It's not the market to decide, and the market is not the measure. And you have a lot of state interventions. It was never a good choice. Yeah.
Anytime liquidity injection is required, it shows that we're in trouble.
Yeah.
Do you believe that
It's a sign of weakness. Yeah.
Do you believe that they're trying to maybe prevent a housing market crash or to keep it liquid in that sense?
To keep it liquid in that sense. It's not about the interest rates, it's about liquidity.
So it doesn't really help the majority of people more so than corporations. Am I getting that right?
Correct, yeah.
You
But
heard it,
it's a nice
folks.
argument. It's a nice argument to say interest rates will go down, but it's about liquidity.
It's about liquidity. I see.
Yeah.
Hey, I like hearing the truth. You know what I mean? Don't sugarcoat it for me. Don't sugarcoat it for the audience. I think a lot of people, need to understand these facts, that as much as I'm a fan of some of the things that the administration is doing, I think we've also got to look through a clear lens and understand that, some things are done for reasons that may or may not benefit the majority of people and may benefit, you know, those in power or those with money. And it seems like that is one of those situations. Okay, excellent. Well, I want to say thank you
Very good.
again, Dr. Metzler, for joining us here and giving us your insights on the next phase of the global financial meltdown. If you had to guess, how long do you think it'll be before we see another serious movement on precious metals, or some actual movements on, some worrisome inflation? Just a guess. No one's going to hold you to it.
We see a squeeze out of silver very soon. Okay, so will happen the next 2 months, and this could have influence on the gold price, and so this will be the next thing to happen. China has taken Taiwan, then let's have another talk. Yeah.
Oh man, it sounds scary and exciting at the same time. Ladies and gentlemen, make sure you're properly hedged. Thank you again to PhD economist, former Fitch ratings director, Dr. Marco Metzler. Appreciate you, sir. Thanks again for joining us.
Bye bye. Thanks.
God bless.